Hello, everyone, and welcome to this session on Ask Me Anything About ChatGPT for Enterprises. I'm Krati Khandelwal. I work as Associate Director Marketing at Yellow.ai, and we have with us today Anurit Chenoy, who works as Associate Director Product at Yellow.ai, who's supposed to be a very talented person when it comes to anything related to NLU, ML, and things like ChatGPT. He's our go-to person at Yellow. And since there was so much chatter going around ChatGPT online, and there were so many questions that we were being asked by customers, our prospects, we thought it's a good idea to just sort of get on a platform and answer these questions and help people really understand what's going on, right? And interestingly, you know what, Anirudh, I was just talking to a friend the other day, and apparently, my friends think since I work in AI, I know everything related to AI, which is obviously not the case. But he happened to ask me, what is ChatGPT? And my response to him was, well, what ChatGPT does is it takes information from the internet and it generates answers for you, basis the information from internet, whatever the question you ask them. And interestingly, his question to me was that isn't that like Google? And I was a little perplexed. Well, that is sort of like Google, but there are some differences. So we'd really like to hear from you, Anirudh, right? That what are the differences between Google and ChatGPT?
Yeah, I think let's do a thing. Let's just go to ChatGPT and ask right there. Let's ask ChatGPT what
Yeah.
it thinks. So I'll just share my screen. And for those of you who have not tried it yet, you just need to go to chat.openai.com, sign up over there. And once you're done, you land on the screen. And this is where you can start interacting with ChatGPT, right? So
Right.
let's
We'll
ask it
also
a
share
question.
this link with you guys on the comment section so you can access it alongside with Anirudh.
Absolutely. So now I have access. Let's just ask, will ChatGPT replace Google anytime soon? Let's see what it says. You just hit enter and it starts sort of generating text, right? And well, let's see what it says. It's saying it is unlikely that ChatGPT or any other language model will replace Google or any other search engine in the near future. While language models like ChatGPT have made significant progress in their ability to understand and generate human-like text, they are not currently able to perform many of the tasks that are integral to the operation of a search engine, which is crawling the web, indexing web pages, ranking search results based on relevance and importance. Right. So I think this is one of the very interesting things, right? Because what Chat GPT and other GPT-like technologies have done is basically these are generative models, right? They are language models in the sense they've been trained to understand language as a whole. Right now, you might say, okay, that's the same thing as what Google does as well, right? When I'm typing something or when I'm searching something, it's basically getting something relevant, right? Which is true. But what Google does is just like what ChatGPT mentioned over here, is it's basically retrieving information, right? It's like a retrieval model. Whereas what ChatGPT does is it actually looks based on the training data that's been fed, it starts generating the information for us, right? Which is the difference between what Google does today and what ChatGPT is doing. That ChatGPT is actually generating text in a way that's good in some cases, right? For example, you go to Google, you type out something, you get like a bunch of results, right? And then you need to kind of summarize it and kind of assimilate it in your mind. Whereas in ChatGPT, it's already doing that for you, right? It's basically kind of summarizing that information for you, which is good, right? As humans, we don't have all the time in the world to kind of go and find out what's the best website where I can get this information. But I think the other thing, which again ChatGPT mentioned over here, is the fact that it crawls the web. What Google crawls the web, right? Again, here ChatGPT is basically limited, and in fact, when you sign up, they even tell you this, right? That it's limited to information that has occurred in the world. I think it's before 2022, right? So let's say something crazy happens tomorrow, right? Or maybe there's a new president in a certain country. Elections happen very frequently, right? There are some real world events that occur, and you'll see that ChatGPT probably does not give factually correct answers for those kind of things, right? Where it's a very dynamic events that are happening, whereas Google is always up to date with the latest information, right? So from a functional standpoint, these are differences. But from more of a technical standpoint, they're completely different approaches, right? One is a language model that generates text, whereas the other is more of a retrieval of information, right? But yeah, these are the
Correct.
different.
So, is it safe to say that, let's say, Google is more archive of everything that's happening online, whereas Chat GPT is more like acting as a sort of a content writer in between and formulating answers based on those archive. Is that like the right interpretation?
Yeah, to an extent, right? So you can think of it as this way. ChatGPT is basically consuming all of these the content that's available on the internet, and that's actually how it's trained as well, right? It's going through millions of web pages, documents, whatever is literally publicly accessible, right? And then sort of assimilating that, learning from that, learning language from that, and then trying to answer your question by generating the relevant response, right?
Got it.
Whereas what Google does is slightly different, right? It's basically sort of crawling the web, indexing them into a easily searchable format, so that when you ask a query, it's basically going and fetching that information, right? Whereas with ChatGPT, it's actually generating; it's not really fetching from anywhere, right? So that's the core difference essentially between the two.
Got it. And I think we can also say that then maybe Chat GPT gives you one answer and Google will give you like options to sort of select from. Is is
Correct.
is that right? Yeah.
Correct, right? And in fact, right, in some of the questions, if you see ChatGPT's response, right, it actually says I don't have access to the internet, right? So I can't get information about
Got
those things, right?
yeah. Cool. So before we move on to our second question, for those of you who are still joining in, please feel free to sort of type in your questions in the comments section, and we'll take those up live. Um, so my next question for you, Anirudh, is I think the reason ChatGPT became such a big hype and it went viral was also because of a lot of paranoia, right? Like one of the main reasons was this that, and we also went up on internet to look what are the most asked questions about ChatGPT, right? And surprisingly, the questions were like, am I going to lose my job as a programmer, content writer, graphic designer? How does this affect? Am I going to be replaced? So, what are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, in fact, I've been seeing a lot of LinkedIn posts of late where product managers are just going and typing, "Hey, write a product requirements document for this feature," and boom, right? ChatGPT just gives you a whole PRD. So this is actually a very interesting question, right? And here's my personal opinion on this. I think this is a phenomenal bit of technology that's basically generating artifacts, right? And these artifacts could be anything, right? For ChatGPT, it's of course text, but we have seen DALI 2, which kind of does art as well, right? Images, art. So it may appear that, hey, like if this is doing so well, then as a graphic designer, my job is kind of not probably secure, right? Or as a content writer, it's like I'm getting blogs in like seconds almost, right? But here's my opinion on this, right? I think what we will see the market moving towards is that these generative technologies, like ChatGPT, it'll basically lower the barrier to entry for people who have not, for whom like content writing is not a profession, right? So, for example, myself, right? Now, let's say I want to write a feature release blog. I would have to go and find a content writer to do it because I'm not a content writer, right? But with a technology like ChatGPT, I can go and basically get a basic draft of it and then just edit it, right, to my liking. What that means is that for people who are not content writers, who are not graphic designers, right, these technologies are basically making these talents more accessible, right? That I can start generating images, I can start generating graphics, I can start generating content, even though I'm not a graphic designer or a content writer, right? So it's basically lowering the bar for me to start creating these artifacts, these content, right? Whereas for people who are content writers, who are graphic designers, I think they will start incorporating these technologies into their workflows and push the limits of what they were previously able to do. Right, like all of us, who are content writers, you've always had that sort of writer's block, right? Suddenly, you just don't know what to write about, right? Or you're completely clueless. That's where I think ChatGPT will help by giving you a sort of stencil to break that writer's block and to kind of move forward in your content creation, right? Or let's say you're a graphic designer, you just want to brainstorm how it's going to look like with a bunch of ideas. That's where DALI 2 will perhaps help over there, right? Where it'll just generate a bunch of things and then you can select and work alongside these technologies, right? So overall, I think this is my opinion that it's going to lower the barrier to entry for people who are outside that profession, so that they can also start being more productive. I don't have to depend on graphic designers, for example. I can just create something simple, right, with these technologies. Whereas for the people who are in the profession, it's going to push their productivity and their output really, really high, right? So it's going to lower the barrier to entry, but increase the ceiling of output that are going to come from these professionals. So in short, I don't think anyone's job is going anywhere. In fact, everyone is going to be way more productive. The output and the quality of output is going to really and get enhanced.
I actually have a follow-up question, and might be a little bit controversial, but they also say, right, that ChatGPT is sort of a toddler right now and it's still learning. So I mean, while what it does right now is maybe helping, like, how to put it, in a rookie sort of people build
Yeah.
something which is a junior level and not professional. But do you think that in the next 5 years it will reach that professional grade?
I think it's tough to say, right? Because, and the reason why it's tough to say is because of how rapidly things are moving, right? I mean, it was literally 2017 when the entire, Transformers paper kind of came out, which is one of the seminal papers in the industry, right? Not the Transformers movie, the Transformers, the model architecture, right? And I mean, it's just 5 years from 2017, and look at where we are, right? It's like, this is ChatGPT is generating text where it's even hard to differentiate between what is human written and what is artificially written, right? So it's given the pace of development, it's very hard to say when it's going to sort of write professional grade things. But then my point is that, see, even if that happens, um, I think it will replace the menial aspects of content development or creative work, right? I think it's where the most potential will come from is with these technologies working alongside humans, where
Hmm.
you have this human plus AI kind of connect, right? The human tries something, or the AI gives an output, and then the human kind of selects, okay, this is better, but give me something a little bit with more of this and less of this, right? And then the AI generates another sort of artifact, right? And then these collaborations ultimately lead to a better sort of output, right? So
Right.
in that scenario, if let's say ChatGPT is becoming more of a professional writer, that's good, right? Because for me as a sort of professional, it just means that my output would also increase alongside it.
Right. So, Anirudh, I think it's a lot similar to our philosophy at Yellow, right? Where we say we build the best of human plus AI. And even for ChatGPT, I think human intelligence will always be needed, especially when you're looking at high quality professional work. I mean, we will not be able to rely on it 100%, right? Because at the end of the day, what human intelligence can do, or the empathy, or the sort of sensitiveness that a human intelligence will have, probably AI will not have. Can we sort of agree on that?
Absolutely, I think, and it's empathy is one bit of it, and I think, see, there is this tinge of human intuition, right, or creativity, however you want to call it, right, which I think we can it it'll probably be a little bit harder to kind of recreate that, which is why, again, I'm coming to the same point, right, which is the human plus AI collaboration is perhaps going to be the way forward, because
Hmm.
together, right, you'll be producing much better output as opposed to just relying on the AI bit of it.
Got it. So, Anil, moving on to our next question and speaking about the public chatter, we also launched a poll on our LinkedIn channel, right? And we asked our audience that, what do they think are the most exciting potential use cases for ChatGPT in their industry, particularly. And interestingly, 50% of the voters saw its application in customer service, with research and development second with 27%, and sales and marketing finished a close third with 19%. So, like, what are your thoughts on that? Do you agree with this segregation, or you have a different opinion?
I think definitely we'll see a lot of potential in the customer service automation space. In fact, with all of them, right? So I'd say that while it's true that customer support automation is going to be probably massively beneficial if you use ChatGPT, but it's not just limited to that, right? And for us to understand that, I think it's important to first kind of get to what ChatGPT is doing different, right? And here, I think one thing to understand is that one of the main plus points of ChatGPT is that it's a language model optimized for dialogue or for conversations, right? Like for the first time, actually, while there have been research in the past, but here you can actually interact with ChatGPT and it remembers the context of your previous conversation, right? So, for example, you can say something like, "Hey, this is the code," right? This is not related to customer support automation, but just a generic example, right? Like here's a piece of code in Python. What's wrong with it, right? And ChatGPT can say that, "Hey, this and this is wrong with it," and then you can kind of follow up with your own questions, right? That is incredibly powerful. And if we see how that applies to customer support automation or for any conversational AI support automation in general, right? Context is a very, very important integral part of it. Why? Because think about it, right? Context is a way for a conversation between me and you, for example, to kind of proceed without me having to repeat myself again and again, right? Example, I just say, what happened to this order number, blah, 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 right? And then let's say a customer support agent says that your order number, blah, 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 is on the way, whatever, right? And then let's say I just come and say, hey, you know what, it's going to be too late, just cancel it, right? Now, let's say a customer service or representative says, which order? That's kind of dumb, right? Because I literally just told you which order it is, right? And that's why context is so important. And that's what ChatGPT brings to the play, right? It gives you this very contextual conversation. The second reason why I feel ChatGPT is probably going
Try
to.
to add a question there, but isn't that sort of already being done in conversational AI automation? But
It
like
is, but it's very rule based,
the
right? Yeah, I think your question
okay,
was, isn't it already being done? It is, but it's very rule based, right? A lot of the you have to, for example, feed, like when you recognize that the order number has been given by the user, you need to manually kind of take it and feed it as an entity, right? Whereas with ChatGPT, what you're seeing is that it's very fluid. You don't have to really do it, right? It just remembers the context. It remembers part of the conversation. That's very important, right? But the second bit, I think, is that of course this sort of contextual remembering and follow up questions really makes the conversation very fluid. I think the second thing is that with ChatGPT, the language generation is very controlled in nature. Right, and what I mean by language generation is, any of these sort of language models. For example, at the start of the video, we just went and we tried a question, right? We said, "Is it going to replace Google?" And it gave a whole bunch of answers, right? Why did it give that answer, right? Why did it not give another answer? It's very hard to answer these questions because there's no explainability, right? In fact, one of the biggest challenges with language generation in general has been that there has been no control over it, right? In fact, there have been a lot of projects in the past where companies try to take these sort of language models to public, and it started giving very biased answers, very irrelevant answers.
right.
Sometimes even answers which are very like hallucinations, right? Factually incorrect things, saying that the president of some country is this, whereas it's not even real, right? But with ChatGPT, actually, they've been able to control that to a large extent. And this again means that, for customer service automation or for any conversational AI solution, that's a good thing, right? Because now you can control what your bot can say, but still take advantage of the generative model. So you don't have to sit and create all answers, but you can sort of control the ones which are coming, right?
It's more like
Uh,
filtering. So you can
yes,
filter the information using
correct,
conversational AI
correct,
solutions.
correct, correct. Exactly. You don't have to sit and create every single answer out there, but you can filter and say these are the things that I probably want to do, right? Uh,
Censorship.
yeah, this is not there right now, but it's probably going to be the direction moving forward for ChatGPT.
Got it. So Anirudh, I think one other question that I would have after this, right? Like you said, it's generative and how it remembers the context. How do you see sort of OpenAI monetizing this model, especially when it comes to adoption by businesses? Like, where do you think that stands currently, right? And from those of our viewers who are still sort of trickling in, this is the conversation about ChatGPT and how businesses can leverage it. And that is the most asked question that we're also getting asked by our customers, prospects, and colleagues, right? That do you see businesses adopting this? for automation reasons?
Right. I think there are two questions, right? One is the monetization piece, and the second is how can businesses kind of utilize it. For the monetization piece, I think OpenAI would probably go with what they did for GPT-3, which is basically expose this as a developer API, and then just charge for API calls, right? So anyone can basically use it. You just hit the API with the question, and then you get the response as a return, right? I think that's how the monetization will happen. There's really no questions about it. It's all in beta right now, by the way. They've not really opened up any of the APIs. But I think coming to the second question, right, which is how businesses can utilize this, I think this is where things get very interesting. I think one thing that will definitely happen, or rather OpenAI will sort of push forward for, is how do we see ChatGPT right now is very generic, right? It can answer very general questions, but obviously nothing very business specific, right? Let's say you have a big business in the petrochemical industry, something in the insurance space. They've got their own domain knowledge, and they've got knowledge sources which are very relevant to their company, right? Maybe a specific policy, maybe a specific product, whatever is there that they have. How do we allow ChatGPT to sort of answer questions related to those businesses and those products, right? And to do that, OpenAI would basically have to allow ChatGPT businesses to fine-tune ChatGPT with their own data. And that is where I think the interesting things will start happening, because businesses can then have their own sort of variant of ChatGPT to answer these questions. Of course, these have not been done yet, but I think that's going to be the obvious next step, right? And I think this is where, as Yellow.ai, I think where we can really add value is because we have some of the highest number of conversations happening on our platform, right? We've got a huge data store of conversations. So once this opens up, we have the data. We can just fine tune ChatGPT according to whatever our customers require, and they get their own version of ChatGPT, right? Which is going to be really exciting, I think, and very powerful, in fact.
Interesting. So, you're saying we see in future Yellow.ai and such companies capitalizing on ChatGPT, but B2C enterprises directly cannot, because they will still need some censorship, which companies like us will be able to offer them. Is that correct?
See, I think this is where the build versus buy kind of trade-off would have to happen with these businesses, right? When OpenAI opens up these APIs, they're just going to give it to everyone, right? So maybe a business can actually just utilize that API themselves. But this is where I think it's very important to understand what ChatGPT can do right now, and what a conversational AI solution actually needs, right? Now, for a conversational AI solution, let's say a virtual assistant, whatever it is, right? A good virtual assistant has to do two things, right? One is understand what the user is saying, right? And the second thing is actually do something, right? And that something can be either giving an answer, which ChatGPT does very well today, or the second thing can be that it has to perform a certain action, right? And that's where conversational AI solutions become very powerful. And what I mean by an action is I just go to a bot and I say, hey, can you reschedule my flight on the 4th of December, right? And it actually goes and then reschedules that flight, right? This is different from giving me information about something, right? And
Understood.
so what I'm trying to imply is that ChatGPT solves for the answer giving and the sort of knowledge, that it shares. But for good conversational AI solutions, you still need a sort of way to let these bots actually do something, right? Which means
Right.
integrating with backend systems that a business has, that allows them to quickly file for a claim, download their policy, buy a certain product, fetch their order information. And this is obviously not something that ChatGPT can do right now, right? It can fetch information, but for it to do something, it needs access to third-party systems, right? And we'll see, of course. I think in the industry, we'll obviously see progress happening towards this, where these kind of models somehow have access to third-party systems, and they can actually help users perform real-world actions, right? But that's one of the reasons why I feel you know, like that, integrating with third-party backend systems is still something that's pretty important.
I think, yeah. So integrating, and also the overall censorship, right? I think conversational AI solutions like ours will ensure that, there's nothing too controversial that is being said. Because I think one of the major things that I keep seeing on the internet is also the erratic responses that ChatGPT sometimes happens to give, right? Because it is at the end of the day just sort of collecting information and formulating an answer basis whatever it has learned on it. So I think that can be safely said as one of the key reasons, right?
Yeah, I think that's going to be one of the key areas of focus for OpenAI as well. In fact, like if you see from GPT-3 to ChatGPT, I think one of the interesting things that has happened is the reduction of these sort of hallucinations, or these erratic behavior that you mentioned, right? I think moving forward, they're actually going to kind of push for that to reduce a lot, and that will come from a lot of the human feedback that they get as well, right? So I think that will definitely reduce over time.
Got it. I think I just have one last question, and which is around when we talk about ChatGPT, right? One thing that resonates alongside it is generative AI. And well, generative AI is a field with unimaginable potential, right? And so, as a product person and as somebody who's like an expert in the space, what trends do you see shaping the space in the next 5 years?
Oh wow! I think I can talk about this for hours together because I absolutely like
We do
find
not
this
have
field to be
hours, so you
fascinating.
need to compress.
Yeah, I find it to be fascinating, right? Because I think generative AI truly has the potential to change the way that you know humans work. To be honest, right? And I think there are a lot of things that are happening in the market already. For example, OpenAI kind of released this model called Codex a couple of months back, which actually allows developers to kind of use Codex to autocomplete their code, right? So imagine you just go and say, write a Python script to do this, and it just boom, it produces that code, right? Which ChatGPT does right now, but I'm talking about
Become a
like one
coder?
year back. Sorry.
So can I become a coder in that case?
That's what I meant, right? It reduces the sort of barrier for people to become coders or graphic designers or anything, right? But what they actually found out is that the developers, professional developers themselves, I think they've quoted some statistics also. It's around, I think, 26% of the time, they just used whatever Codex provided as a response, right? So in a way, that means that 26% of my time has now been saved as a professional developer. I'm not even talking about someone who's not a developer, right?
Right.
So these are the places where I think generative AI has a lot of potential, which I hinted at earlier as well, where that human plus AI collaboration kind of happens, right? Again, I think there's another news that came out where Microsoft is planning to use DALI 2. So those of you who are not aware of what DALI 2 does is, you can basically go and give a description of a picture, and it actually
Mhm.
generates that picture, right? It's ridiculous.
Oh.
And Microsoft is planning to use this in their designer product. So the way that they're thinking about it is, as a graphic designer, you would basically go and you don't want to look at that blank canvas, right? That's scary for anyone. So instead of that, you just go and say what you want to do, and then you get a base template generated by DALI 2, and then you can go and edit that, right? So this is another place where I think generative AI really really helps. But I think in terms of trends, one thing that we will see is, of course, this human AI kind of collaboration happening, but also more hybrid sort of models where because the companies, right, especially businesses and enterprises, they've already got a lot of these local knowledge, right? For example, if you're an insurance company, you already know what your users are asking for. You have a very good idea about what these certain words mean, how your customers interact with you. How do you bring in that sort of intuition into these models, and
Mm.
then use it? Right? So that's where I think that hybrid sort of models are also, kind of might be moving towards, right, where companies have a way to bring in their sort of intuition, their knowledge of how an industry works into these models, and then kind of utilize it. And I
Mm.
think we'll definitely see a lot of kind of progress in terms of ChatGPT, DALI 2, those kind of things. I think that will definitely sort of continue happening as we progress. Yeah.
Interesting. I think, that was really, really helpful, Anirudh. Despite being from an AI company, I think I had very limited idea about what it can do and what it means for enterprises. But this definitely helps me understand that there's still a long way for ChatGPT to be sort of being used by enterprises directly. And even if when it starts doing that and it reaches there, I think companies like Yellow.ai will still sort of need some censorship and will bring in that intelligence that will be needed to make it more industry focused, right? So I think my last question, Anirudh, would be, how can companies like Yellow.ai use Chat GPT or leverage Chat GPT?
Right. I think here, one of the things to understand, like I mentioned earlier as well, is that for any conversational AI solution to make sense, businesses need to have control over how conversational flows work because their brands are at stake over here, right? And the second thing is that they need to have conversational AI solutions which can integrate with their backend systems, right? And there's a lot of automation that needs to happen for that conversational AI solution to be useful for the users, right? I mentioned it earlier as well. One of the things is that let's say that there's a sort of airline or a booking bot, right? Where a user basically wants to reschedule their booking or their aircraft ticket or whatever it is. For that to happen, first, the conversational AI solution basically needs to retrieve information about who this user is, their booking information, and then understand that this user wants to sort of reschedule their flight, find flights whether it's available or not from the backend system, and then present this to the user, find the one that they want to reschedule to, and then sort of make this happen. So in short, what I'm trying to hint at is that for a conversational AI solution to be effective for businesses and provide high ROI, these bots need to actually do something, right? And this is one
Hmm.
of the places where ChatGPT is currently not designed to do, right? Which is integrating with backend systems, providing very controlled flows, very predictable flows of how a conversation should proceed, and get information from relevant backend systems as well, right?
Got it.
So I think this is they will coexist, I think, in the future, right? Because for businesses to kind of get value, this automation is very important because that's ultimately what this is the ROI for businesses, right? And that intelligence layer, or maybe that more fluid conversational experience that can perhaps come from ChatGPT, right? So it
Chat.
has to be a best of both worlds, where there is something that is more predictable, that provides high automation, whereas you also have this sort of fluid conversational experience. So I think this is where, for a conversational AI platform like Yellow AI, we can really leverage ChatGPT whenever they open it up.
Understood. Cool. I think that's our time, Anirudh. Thank you so much for this. Honestly, personally, despite being in this space, I there were so many things here that I learned about ChatGPT and what it means for businesses, and I'm sure our audience feels the same. And for those of you who sort of stuck with us so far, feel free to keep adding your questions. And even if we cannot reach out to them right now, we'll definitely reach out to you individually. Thank you so much for your time, Anirudh. This was really a very insightful discussion. Thank you.